Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Version 1, a podcast where people come to talk about their creative processes, imposter syndrome, inspiration, failures along the way, and much more. I'm your host, Waverly, and this week I interview Anjali Sundaram. She is an NYC-based food writer and recipe developer focusing on tips and methods for the solo chef. She loves to discover new flavor combinations and push the boundaries of home cooking, using her years of writing and videography experience to inspire people to love cooking for themselves. I'm so excited because Anjali and I have been friends for almost a decade now, living in New York, and in this episode, we talk about how Anjali got started cooking and developing her own recipes while she was abroad, how she experiments with pairing different flavors, how she balances working full time while handling her newsletter and cooking, and how she takes the pressure off herself to post a lot, and that helps prevent feeling overwhelmed or burned out. So without further ado, here is my interview with Anjali Sundaram. Hi, Anjali. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Can we start off with just having you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am Anjali. I've been in New York for about a little over 6 years now, and I am a I hate saying food content creator because I feel like the phrase content creator is so overused now, but I guess that's what I am. I'm a food writer and video slash photographer slash recipe developer. Yeah, and I guess we knew each other through friends of friends. Although I guess we technically worked together, which I always forget.
It was a long
At
time
our
ago.
former life, and we interned together. So I guess that's really how we met back in like 2017. We were interns at where I still am now in this business news place, and yeah, and then we've just stayed friends because
Yeah. I remember meeting you when we were interns because we had a mutual friend, Rachel, and you had
yes,
gone to college with Rachel, and I met Rachel because we interned in the same department. So I didn't meet you through work. But Rachel was like, "Oh, let's get together with this other intern who I go to college with, who I'm friends with. And she's just another
yeah,
intern at the company." And I was like, hell yeah, cool. And yeah,
yeah,
and then we both got jobs at the same place after school and then just kept in touch ever since. And yeah,
yeah.
so yeah. So I'm so excited to talk to you because I think you do a really great job of balancing full-time work with all of your creative pursuits. Like you cook, you write, and create content, as you said. You also, I know, do music and you do photography. And so I think you do a really good job of doing that because I think so many people, myself included, by the way, would do a really bad job of, I would just like work full time, come home from work, make dinner and watch TV and not really pour myself into anything. But
Mm,
you've always done a really good job at that. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you your
yeah.
flowers in relation to that. And hopefully you will inspire many other people
Oh,
listening.
thanks. That's really nice to hear because it definitely doesn't feel like that all the time. I'm glad I can pretend that it comes across that way.
Yeah, from
But
the outside,
yeah,
it certainly does.
yeah.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a great question. I heard you ask some other people this on your other episodes, and I was like, what did I want to be? Because I actually don't really know that I had like a goal when I was like a kid. And honestly, I still don't. I think I wanted to be like, I wanted types of being rather than like jobs. So I wanted to like, I guess I wanted to be a writer, but I wanted to be like RIP JK Rowling type of writer. I wanted to be like immediately successful writer, or I wanted to be at the Oscars giving the speech. I didn't want to be like the filmmaker that has to work a long time and then eventually gets to the Oscars and what that would be like. And I'm none of those things. I guess I'm a writer, but I'm certainly not like best-selling multi-series author.
Yeah,
And I
not
work
yet.
in TV, but it's certainly not like going to the Emmys. But yeah,
There's still time though. You can certainly write a best-selling fantasy series like Harry Potter.
true. There's totally time. There is
Because
time.
didn't J.K. Rowling not write her first book till she was in her like 40s or something? Isn't that
Yeah,
the
that might be
story?
true. At least 30s, yeah. And she was like a nun before that. I do remember having this. Did you ever have these things like leap pads or leapfrogs? That they were like these like books that were like interactive and you would click on or tap them. It was like way pre iPad, but you would tap like a thing, and then it would have an audio thing tell you what that thing was. And so I had one like on film for some reason. I had one about movie sets, and it would have a picture of a movie set, a typical movie set. And so they had a guy holding a boom mic, and then you would click it and they'd be like, this is a gaffer. He does this. And
That's so
I
cool.
just would sit in the car on like long trips and click that over and be like, I want to be there. But with no specific idea of what I wanted to do, I just wanted to be there.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's
It
been the
sounds like you
vibe ever
had
since.
a creative streak since you were young. Did you always enjoy cooking even when you were a kid?
No, I didn't cook much or bake much when I was a kid. I remember doing some stuff for high school projects. I remember making it for this French class that ended up being really bad. They were delicious, but my dad hated the smell. And so that was not an inspiring moment that I took forward with me as, oh my gosh, that's what I want to be forever. It was actually maybe the opposite of never make these again in this house. My cooking didn't really start until I was abroad in France, and because I was had to be self-sufficient and I wasn't living in a dorm. So that was when, yeah, I got to spend more or less my own money, figure out how to cook in my own little house and what I like, what my palate is, and figure out resources. Like that was when that really started, I think.
So was that during college, during some sort of study abroad trip?
Yeah, sophomore year, I studied in Aix-en-Provence. And yeah, I was living like adjacent to a family, and the family was just two older people, and I had my own little house. And so I had to cook for myself because they don't have that like dining hall cafeteria or anything. It was very much self-sufficient, but it has a great market scene there. I love Monoprix. I love just, yeah, I really got into just like random types of food. Also living in Europe, we went on like a trip to Italy, and I brought back some random type of pasta that I'd never tried before. And then I made that pasta. That was a very lucky first foray, I think, into cooking. That's the environment really set it into motion, I think.
For sure. What were your first sort of meals, or how did you first approach it? Because learning how to cook can be really overwhelming if you don't know where to start. I speak as someone who has never really learned how to cook until pretty recently, relatively speaking. I was like a butter noodle kid slash butter noodle adult for a very long time, and I'm just starting to learn, and it's so daunting sometimes. So, what were your first steps in learning what ingredients to use or what recipes to make?
First, I will say I love a butter noodle with just ground on some Parmesan, especially when you like do something after work and you come back and you don't have anything to do. Some butter, some noodles, and cheese. That's all you need. But before I left, I think my parents were concerned about how I was going to sustain myself. So we sat down and just made a list of like all my favorite recipes that we make at home and how to make them, like the basic ones. So we had the really basic spaghetti bolognese. And so my mom wrote on like a sticky note how like the recipe for it, what she does, etc. Then my dad made one of his like turmeric potatoes that he makes with like mustard seed. And so I just had a little collection of those that I brought with me and took pictures of. And yeah, that it was just started from there, I guess. It was like I figured out pretty early on that sort of like cooking for one sense of if I'm alone and I buy like two entire peppers because I want a green pepper and a red pepper for this recipe, like what am I supposed to do now that I have half a pepper left of each and I have to use them, otherwise they're going to go bad. So then I ended up using the peppers for home fries the next day, or just finding ways to use the ingredients and letting that guide me rather than like recipes. But that was also at the time of like the start of BuzzFeed Tasty, like really the nascence of like of food videos and food content on Instagram. And so the number of saved BuzzFeed Tasty videos I had back then on my Instagram, and probably still do because who deletes that ever, was wild. And so that was another way to just experiment with like totally random things and yeah, trying new stuff all the time. But I did have my parents send me like boxes of Annie's sometimes because I was like for 5 months. It was a long time.
Totally. And as you were learning how to cook in Europe and bringing these new skills back to the States, were you seeing cooking at the time as enjoyment, or was it more of just a necessity of I need to feed myself? And when did that switch to enjoyment, if that makes sense?
I feel like it was enjoyment pretty early on because it was so much about discovery from early on. And I would have some failures or cooking things that didn't taste good, but I'd never viewed those as there's always something else you can make to feed yourself. If you spend a lot of time doing something and making it, but it doesn't taste good, there's going to be like some bread in the fridge. So that didn't feel like a failure because you did it anyway. And so all that process of discovery just kept going and going. And it was just exciting for me to just find that's what's so cool about food is that you're always finding something new and learning along the way, but then getting to a point where you can create your own flavor combinations and recipes is just, yeah, I think it really was always enjoyment.
That's wonderful. Yeah, when or how long did it take you to go from relying on recipes to be able to have enough knowledge to create your own? Because just to give my backstory, I really didn't cook at all going through college other than very basic stuff like pasta, maybe a sandwich, scrambled eggs, like very basic. But when I got to New York, the way that I started to learn how to cook is I would do meal kits because it's very hold your hand, everything's measured. You don't have to go to the grocery store, it's all sent to you. And that's what kind of started my cooking journey. We've lived in New York for the same amount of time. I've been here for 7 years. Yeah, 7 years now. And I recently, and it's also having a boyfriend who knows how to cook more than I do. I recently just made this like peanut noodle, like spicy Asian noodle dish without a recipe for the first time. And that was like a month ago. And John had to help me. So it takes a long time. So I really commend you for being able to create your own recipes. I certainly can't. But yeah, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, it's a good question. If you go back to when I was abroad, it's been about 10 years that I've been cooking for myself. So it has been a long time. So I guess I feel like when you're like abroad and using American recipes or in the opposite, like I loved Great British Bake Off. So I found recipes by Paul Hollywood or French cookbooks or something like that. There's always something that's a little bit off or an ingredient that's off or an ingredient you just don't want to cook or something you don't have or meat or something like that. And so one or two substitutions every recipe ends up actually creating something new that time, but also telling you what works and what doesn't and what you can sub for something. So, mushrooms for chicken so I guess that's what started it and knowing what I like. I like something spicier or I like to use Indian spices that I know and grew up with and think that could be good with this. And so I'll add it and then that creates something new. And eventually, once you learn the ingredients and the types of flavors that work and how to cook like a potato in a few different ways, it goes from there. Yeah, I don't know. And I didn't think necessarily about putting my name to like calling myself like a recipe developer or creator until pretty recently too, I think, when I started the Substack and got more into the Instagram, where I was like, if I'm going to share these recipes, I want to be sure that they're mine. And all food and recipes are inspiration, but if I'm putting my name on them, I want to make sure that it's not something that I'm not plagiarizing or that it's original and coming from myself. Yeah, then I started leaning into like completely, how do I do that fully? Like, how do I really start from scratch while using the recipes more as guidelines than specific instructions.
Gotcha. I didn't realize how creative cooking can be until relatively recently. I have to admit, I don't know much about cooking, but I think it is really creative because you're thinking about texture, you're thinking about pairing different flavors, you're thinking about presentation. And so I'm curious, how do you think about creativity in your cooking?
That's a good question. I agree. It's really creative and it's almost like art that you get to eat in a way. Like you go through this whole process or like an essay where you have like your first draft, right? You have just chunky paragraphs that's like you've chopped up all your ingredients and you're ready to go. And then you put them in the pan. That's like draft 2. And then instead of just reading an essay, you get to eat your food. So I think it is really creative and it's also really like meditative. I think it makes you really grounded and centered. And when you're frying something, for example, if you let your attention stray, it's gonna end badly and painfully, probably. And there's a lot of things like chopping that it's just you want to be completely focused in order to create something. And yeah, it uses a different type of your brain, a different part of your brain, maybe than I think like my job does or just being in the city does. And yeah, letting that just take over is pretty liberating, I think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Something you said reminded me one time I was very stoned in college and I was like cooking in I don't even remember like what exactly it was, but I was cooking something in the kitchen with a roommate and I just was like, I feel like I'm doing arts and crafts. Is cooking just arts and crafts that you can eat? And my roommate was like, all right, you're toasted. Let's chill.
But you're so right. That's
But
what
it
it
is though.
is.
I wasn't wrong. It is like
Sure.
arts and crafts. Like maybe you're not gluing things together literally, but you're mixing things and you're yeah, doing all sorts of shit.
Yeah, no, totally agree. That was more of a window into reality than I thought.
Yeah. When it comes to different pairings, what are your favorite pairings and how do you know if two things will pair well together? Because that's something that I'm trying to figure out. I made peanut noodles the other night, but I'm like, who thought of putting like peanut butter with soy sauce? Those two things on the surface don't go together, but like they
Yeah.
do now because peanut noodles is a pretty common thing to make. It's not like a rare recipe. And so I'm just like, but like someone had to do that for the first time. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, who's to say certain things don't go with certain things? So like, how do you think about pairing different flavors or textures or things in your recipes?
I keep answering this with that's a great question, but it is. I haven't really thought about it like intentionally. I think when I'm thinking about doing something new, I imagine it in my head and in my taste buds for a really long time before I actually make it. So I have to have a sense already like what the ingredient tastes, but I don't know, it's like that ratatouille scene where he closes his eyes and putting the two things together at the same time in his mouth creates something totally new. And I try and do that without them in my mouth at all, I guess, using the memory of it. Yeah, one of my favorite pairings though. I love cheese and fruit, which is a classic pairing, I think, but getting like tangy cheeses and like a crunchy fruit. I love to fry cheese. So like almost all types of cheese can be fried, even like a hard cheese, like a goat cheese and something with pears. So good. I love like the bright paired with something like round and I don't know, I had made like chicken, it was curried mushroom salad and pairing that with some arugula or like especially in the springtime, I think I'm really into this like counter the bright and the earthy. So like making a carbonara, but like topping it with lemony greens. So you have that balance and you could eat them at the same time or not. And
It sounds like you love a charcuterie board.
oh, yes. I love to nibble. I had this weird thing though when I was a kid. So Indian food's what's the word? It's served in disparate portions, like in discrete portions. So like we would have yogurt and rice and then potatoes and then beans and I would have them all in little bowls. And I had this thing where I had to have the ratios correct. And so if I was running out of the rice, but I still had a lot of potatoes left, I had to be like, okay, I'm going to get more rice because the flavor profiles in my mouth have to be the same each time if I'm eating like a rice, a bean, and a potato.
Yeah, it has to be balanced.
Exactly. I don't know why I brought.
No, because you were talking about pairings and those things go together.
Oh,
right?
yeah. So like a charcuterie board, same thing. Like I figure out, yeah, I need a cheese and a salami and two nuts on top and every time. Yeah.
Yeah, when you were talking about you like cheese and then like a crunchy fruit, I love like a square of cheese and then like a grape and then followed by a cracker. And then I also love a charcuterie board with a little bit of like jam or hot honey and you drizzle the hot honey on the cheese and then the jam goes in there somehow too. I love a charcuterie
I think that's
board
literally the ratatouille scene was a grape and a cheese that made the beautiful explosion.
Love that. So, can you talk to me about what inspired you to start your newsletter?
Yeah. I'd had the Instagram for a while. I had it basically since almost moving to New York or like a little bit after. And I really enjoyed that. And at the beginning, it was very fun, very engaging. I had, honestly, it did pretty well too. Like, I got a lot of engagement, and I felt like the work that I was putting into it was worth what I was getting out of it. And then the algorithms changed. They started getting obsessed with video and reels and whatever. And then the pandemic, and it got to a point where the Instagram that I was spending so much time on just wasn't actually giving me back anything. I would put in an hour of work into a reel, and then it just happened to be seen by 3 people. And it's so out of your control that it was just tiring. And when I started to really think about whether I could make this a career, whether like how do I practice these things and market myself a little bit to say I can do food writing, I decided to move it to something. I wanted to create something new, some sort of new world, and I wasn't sure which, but Substack had just started. It was like 2022. Oh, it's got to be 21 because I don't know. I didn't mean to look this up, but it was relatively new, and so it was exciting to grow with the platform. Like it's pretty different now from what it was. Now it's got you can do collaboration and live stuff. You can do videos. You couldn't even post a video when I had started.
Substack has become like its own social media platform, which I didn't realize until recently. Like I talked about this on a previous episode where like they have a news feed where you can it's not a tweet, but it's essentially a tweet. Like it's like a Twitter like
Yeah,
sort of like feed. And
I've
I
started
didn't
to
know
scroll it instead of like another social media because it's a lot. It's people really post.
yeah, it feels like a breath of fresh air because it's not super toxic like some
Mhm.
other social media platforms are. So I've been really into it because I didn't know that for the longest time because I would subscribe to people's Substacks, but I would just get their newsletters in my email, but I didn't download the app. So I didn't know there was a social media aspect to Substack until maybe a couple months ago. And I was like, wait, this is so cool. And then I started joining and posting a little bit, and everyone is so nice and so
Yeah.
supportive. And it's incredible because it feels like a non-toxic Twitter. It feels like what Twitter really should be, theoretically, like a very
Yeah.
like a
It
cool
feels
place.
very creative and a lot of
Yeah.
people supporting each other's creativity specifically. And that's also new though. The app is maybe only like a year and a half old. So maybe like halfway through my journey so far as Substack goes that started. And that's been fun, but also intimidating. It's like keeping up with, I'm like, should I add a podcast? Should I do more video on Substack and in addition to Instagram? And it gets complicated and I definitely don't post enough on this app, but I don't know if I'm evolving fast enough with it because it's evolving so fast. But then you don't necessarily have to. Obviously, you can go at your own pace and figure out what works for like your thing. But it's been cool and intimidating. But
Yeah.
I wanted to do the newsletter because it was more of a way to actually talk directly to people. You get literally in their inbox and to focus more on the writing aspect because I love the photography and the video, but I've never had a very good kitchen for photography, for food photography. And if I wanted to make this into a career, the writing is much more interesting to me too. So wanted to prove to myself that I can self-start this.
Yeah.
It's
That's so cool. I actually had no idea that you were thinking about pivoting to food writing or food content creation. Because I thought this was just like a side project or a hobby, but I didn't realize that theoretically it could be a path forward if you wanted to leave what you currently do. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's been the goal with the Instagram too. Is oh my gosh, it'll get 1 million followers, and then I'll get a brand deal, and then I'll become like this food influencer. And it was the same thing with this. That sort of I have these grand ambitions, and I don't always. I'm my own worst enemy in the actual making of those ambitions. That I'm like, yeah, This is a great concept, and would love to grow this to something huge and collaborate with all my favorite people who are in food right now. But I need to actually do that. I need to actually put in the work. I think a little bit more than I am now.
Totally. I hear you though, because it's the same thing with this show. Like, I hope it grows. I hope it can be
Yeah.
an income source, but it might just be a passive passion project forever. And that's okay too. It is out of your control, but at the same time, there are factors that are in your control, like posting consistently or things like that. But I want to go back to something you said because you said, oh, maybe I'm not posting enough or I'm not doing this. But first of all, I want to commend you for even starting and posting, even if irregularly in the first place, because I think so many people don't start something because they're like, oh, I have to start it. If I'm going to start this, have to post 3 times a week, and then they get overwhelmed and then they just never post instead of just, okay, if you can't commit to a couple times a week, just start with once a week or start with once a month or whatever, it is. So even if you're posting inconsistently, you're still leaps and bounds ahead than a lot of people. And that's not me talking shit because I've had a million things where I just never started them because I got overwhelmed too. So like I've done that. So first of all,
Yeah.
you're doing great. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Thank you.
But how did you get past any sort of hesitations or reservations? Or did you experience that sort of mental block when you were first starting out, where you were so maybe overwhelmed or doubtful of yourself?
Yeah. I think when I first started it, it's like you said that it was so new that I was excited about what I could do with it. And I was posting consistently every month I was sending newsletters for maybe I did 8 months in a row. And then I skipped like 1 month, and that 1 month turned into two, turned into three. And then it's that sort of like someone was told me a while ago that if you never, when you, if you, when you're not doing something, if you're not actively saying that it's a break and you always are making yourself feel guilty for the thing that you're not doing, then your brain doesn't actually turn off and it's not a break. So you're never actually recharging if you're feeling guilty about taking the time for yourself to do something. And so I started to be like, okay, it's okay to not be consistent. It's okay to post when I want to or when I'm inspired. And that has like pros and cons too, I guess, that I do have this thing where when I'm being creative or when I'm writing, especially, I don't start because I know that the way that I work is that if I start it, I have to finish it. And even if they say set a timer for 10 minutes and then stop at 10 minutes and go do something else, I just can't. I know that I do that with everything. I do that with the dishes, and then I don't do the dishes because I know that I don't have time to do all of the dishes at once. But you're right that it's about like the self starting in addition to the self finishing. And that's sometimes the hardest part is like for me, actually, the finishing more than the starting. I find that often my newsletter creativity mirrors my cooking creativity. There will be times when I don't know, I'm just tired or I'm just not feeling it for a few weeks at a time, where I'm in a rut and I'm not creating anything new. And then I do start to doubt myself. Can I even do this? Why am I calling myself a recipe developer if I haven't made anything new in the past like 2 weeks, which isn't even that long. But and then I won't post anything either because there's nothing like worth posting, which maybe I could shift that mindset too. But either way, it's like I'm not writing any new recipes or sharing them because there's nothing to share that I share as shareable. And it's definitely easy to let that simmer too long. But I think, again, if I let myself look at it as a week where I'm not feeling it, a week where I'm not cooking, then that opens you up to the possibility of a week where you are feeling it and waiting for that moment to happen rather than forcing anything and then it never really coming because you're not actually ready for it if you didn't let yourself slow down once in a while. So definitely trying to shift my mindset a bit to that.
I love that. Yeah, because it's something that Ryan said in his episode that you can take a break for a month, for a year, and you could still call yourself a recipe developer or whatever your craft or your interest or your hobby is, because we measure ourselves against these imaginary benchmarks that don't actually exist, and nobody is coming to take the title of recipe developer away from you. Like, even if you developed one recipe and it was 5 years ago, who cares? Like, you still developed a recipe. That's more than I did. I've never developed my own recipe. So you could
Yeah.
still call yourself that. But I think that creative people are so hard on themselves because there's so much comparison of, oh, this person just came out with a book, or this person just got this deal or this opportunity or this fellowship, and it's really hard.
Yeah. And especially I think in New York too, when there's just so many people and there's so much going on all the time, it's easy to think that you need to compare yourself to all that when really you're comparing your one trajectory to probably 30 other people at the same time and thinking that it's an equivalent and it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And something that I'm really guilty of is I'll compare myself to someone who's 10 years older or has been doing something for way longer than I've been. And I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. They got that opportunity or this or that or whatever. And I have to remind myself, it's like they're in their 40s and have been working in this industry like for half of your life. And
Yeah.
so, like, of course, I don't have that opportunity. I've been in this industry for 6 or 7 years, and they've been in it for 15 to 20, which is double the amount of time. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's something that I'm so guilty of.
Yeah, no, definitely. And if you're trying to be it like a self-starter or a freelancer or find a new job or anything like that, you do also feel like you have to be always like building your resume or always doing something so that you can prove to other people that you're doing something and that you need me. Like I'm better than everyone else and you need me for this job because look how much I work and look at all the stuff on my resume and all my Substack posts. But yeah, even that is so out of your control too. And what you can only control is when you want to be creative. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. When you do experience those ruts, do you have any practices or rituals to get out of them?
Writing wise, I don't actually wait. Yeah, I do. I guess they're not like a ritual, but I do find that reading good food writing makes me want to write. So that helps. Just go back to a Ruth Reichel book or open up one of my many cookbooks that are just weighing down that actually broke my bookcase a couple months ago.
Yeah, 'cause those
So
books
use
are
them for
heavy.
something to like just look at what other people are thinking of and let that sort of inspire you. And again, like not force it, I think is really important.
Yeah, totally. Could you talk to me a bit about how your two processes of cooking and writing work together? I guess, do you think of a recipe, cook it, then write about it? Or do you think of a recipe and then write it down and then cook it and then write? Like, how do those two things work in conjunction with each other?
Yeah, if something I'm making, I'll take for example, there's something that I had been thinking ages about making a while ago. But I will think about it for a while. So I'll think about it and again, let those flavors like percolate in my mind and then think about the day that I want to do it. And I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to do after work on Wednesday, so I'm going to make this finally. And then as I'm making it, I usually take pictures and that is a holdover from the Instagram days where I'm like, if this turns out good, I want to be able to post it. If it turns out good and I didn't take pictures, then I'm like, what was the point? I'm the only one that enjoyed that. Not really, but a little bit. So I'll take pictures, and then if it does turn out really good and it's something that I think I want to post, as I go, will write down the measurements that I happen to take. I'm not very good at actually using measurements. So if it's something that I think like I want to post, like a vodka sauce recipe that I made up a couple weeks ago, as I was writing it down, already pouring stuff in and thinking, oh, how much was that? Was that a tablespoon? And just writing that down as I go, because I definitely won't remember it later. And then eating it, seeing if it tasted good, if it's worth sharing with other people. And if it is, then after I eat it and everything, I'll again write down the process of what happened in my notes app. So I've got the ingredients and the process in just my iPhone notes app. And then eventually I get to the posting of it, Substack, and creating a new recipe there. And that can take a lot longer. Like the distance between eating what I made and posting it can be like months, but it doesn't matter, I guess. So they don't know.
Yeah,
But
recipes are evergreen, right? I mean,
Yeah,
relatively,
exactly.
that there's
Yeah,
seasonal things, but seasons always come back around.
exactly. And if I do make something that's really, I made it in the summer and they're just strawberries right now, but I wanted to post it, can always make it, put it in a newsletter later and make it actually make sense seasonally. But
Yeah, totally. How do you come up with original recipes of things that have been done like thousands of times before? Like you mentioned vodka sauce, for example. And I'm sure if I Googled vodka sauce recipes, there'd probably be like 3,000 options. So, how do
mhm.
you think about putting your own unique spin on classic recipes like that one, for example?
I think it's lucky for me that my like niche is cooking for one because very rarely are recipes tailored to one person. So already that's an angle that I can be like, oh, I need to rework this for people who don't want to make 4 batches of vodka sauce and eat it for a week. So that's one, it's fun to do that math. And then to also look up all those various recipes and be like, I'm sure this person has one, this person, and compare and be like, okay, I don't have this and I don't want to use actual canned tomatoes. I'd like to do it with tomato paste. So let's figure out how to do that and just do the math. But yeah, it definitely starts with the scaling it down, makes it certainly easier. Or also putting like that personal spin on it. I don't think I posted this one, but it was more of an idea that I want to keep working on. But butter chicken pasta. I make pasta all the time, and I also love butter chicken, and I've developed a recipe for that. So what if we put them together, like a vodka sauce, penne vodka with chicken, but butter chicken? So it's stuff that already exists, but maybe your brain thinks of it in a little bit of a different way that other people wouldn't put them together.
Cool. That's awesome. Do you have a signature dish or maybe a signature ingredient? You know how Bobby Flay has his crispy rice? Is there
Yep. And his
Anjali's?
gochujang.
Yeah. Is there like an Anjali's blank like recipe that you're known for?
Actually, so I have this recipe for crispy bottom, like fingerling potatoes, not crispy rice, that I made it. It was like a revelation to me the way that I did this. And then I used baking soda in the like water when you parboil it. And then when I told my parents, they were like, that's crazy. Using baking soda, what? It takes out the starch. Yeah, it's a lot of like other chefs use it. And now when they started making it too, and they call it the Anjali potatoes, when they will make it for like dinner parties or take it and bring it to somewhere. And yeah, they call it Anjali's potatoes. And even one of my dad's friends now makes it. So that's been fun. So literally, yeah, I do have one.
I love that. That's awesome. I'll have to try them sometime.
Yeah, for sure. They're very easy. It just takes a while. Potatoes take way longer than you think, but they're always worth it, in my
Uh-huh.
opinion. Love a potato.
Have you ever made something and experienced writer's block about what to write about it?
Yeah. I guess there's like those blurbs that at the top that I do, and sometimes I will end up not starting because I don't feel inspired to write that and describe the dish, especially if I'm not in the right headspace or I'm writing at work.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I feel like I don't get writer's block, but I will say this because I will go, like I said, for periods of not writing. But I don't get it in the moment because I don't really start until I'm inspired to start. The block has passed by the time I'm at the desk. I never really sit down and force myself to stare at a blank page because I'd rather be doing something. It's when it comes and then I have to write it and I have to like jot something down in the notes app, etc. But yeah, it's the opposite of just waiting for it to appear in my head. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. What role do you think that does your newsletter play in your life? In other words, like what do you get out of it that you don't get from your job or from other activities?
That's a good question. It's just nice. It's like something that obviously, like I said, I want to maybe grow into a career, but it's also I'm discovering as I go, like this sense of stuff that I've done my whole life, like writing and cooking and putting them together and being able to do that in a self-started way is just so exciting. And I think what I really love about it is when I get responses to it, responses to other people making the recipes or reading it and enjoying just some of the random banter that I had. Even my parents said that in my last newsletter on eggs was fun. They were laughing out loud. I'm like,
Oh.
I didn't mean for it to be funny, but that's really nice to hear. And yeah, that sense of connection that you don't always get if you are cooking for yourself. It's been a way to, I think that cooking is an act of love. And I think that cooking for yourself, particular, is a really important act of self-love that, like I said, it's intentional. You go through that process, you get to eat it, and you're just caring for yourself. And so having that medium to share what I love and how I love myself, is that weird? With other
No, it's
people
not weird.
is just really rewarding, I think, to even when I don't get much of a response back, it just feels rewarding to click send and see it appear in my inbox. That's awesome. Seeing you wrote that and you created it and you finished it and you clicked send, and great job. You did something.
Totally. What kind of community have you grown through your newsletter?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really like a consistent community, because I've been trying to do also like more of the app or start chats and stuff like that. And I haven't successfully done that. But I feel like it's like those small messages you get in like Instagram DMs of someone saying, "Oh, I'm going to make this tonight." Like that Namdi just texted me that the other day about something I made. It was like, I'm going to try and make this tomorrow. And I'm like, that's awesome. Yeah, do it. Like I made something that you want to make. Like that's great. And I guess if you talk about community as a sense of like gathering together, like a togetherness and other people talking to each other, I suppose I haven't created that, but a sense of just like connection, I guess, is definitely there.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're inspiring others. Was that your goal with the newsletter when you were starting it?
Yeah, I think I really want to get people to love cooking for themselves, because I think, like you said, a lot of people like you are nervous about it or just don't do it. Or a lot of people have reasons where they don't enjoy it. My dad doesn't enjoy it. He hates cooking for only himself. He's like home alone. He never cooks. And I love it. It's freed my mind. It's like obviously created all this creativity. And I just want to help people like shift their mindset to a world where they look forward to cooking for themselves, even after a long day of work. Just how can you make it something that is rewarding and that you look forward to, and not something that you have to do.
I love that. No, John is the same way. He hates cooking for himself. And he always is cooking something for the both of us or he's ordering. And I'm like, no, you have to break that habit. We can't keep
Interesting.
So John is
Yeah,
the
that's so
same
interesting,
way.
because I think it's not like you don't love cooking or that he doesn't love cooking. It's just that something about the process of it doesn't have the same type of value if it's not shared, which is also really beautiful. But sometimes you have to cook for yourself. So then how do you make that a want to?
Yeah, exactly what you said. He enjoys cooking, just not for himself. It has to be for someone else. And I'm like, there's something deeper there happening.
We could unpack that. It's very sweet, but it could warrant some unpacking.
Totally. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
Yeah, but I think like I'm my own worst enemy at that type of thing, because I will get, not to make this sound braggadocious, but I will get compliments on my writing and my recipes and stuff, and people tell me that I am good at what I do. And maybe that is imposter syndrome, right? That's when people tell you're good and you don't believe it.
Yeah, or that you shouldn't be writing your newsletter because you don't deserve to. I'm putting that sort of
Okay,
thing.
yes.
Like,
Yeah, definitely. I'm like, who am I? If I were to go into this as a career, someone were to look at me and be like, okay, but what are your credentials? Like, why should I trust your recipe? That's a great question. I don't know. But I try and look at other people like an Eric Kim or a Priya Krishna. She did work in restaurants. Some people who like haven't necessarily worked in restaurants and or done the Julia Child thing of, okay, let me rephrase. I will look at people who actually are more like a Julia Child, who became the biggest people ever, but she only took cooking classes when she was in her 40s. If you look at her credentials, are just living and loving what she does, having a passion and exploring it. So no one becomes an expert on anything unless, I suppose you just have to fake it till you make it. And there are certain things that give me more of an expertise for sure than other people, but it's definitely really easy to fall into that type of thing. I haven't ever worked in restaurants. I've taken cooking classes, but I haven't gone to culinary school. But then finding the things that make you special. But I have cooked in tiny New York kitchens for a long time. That makes me an expert on that. Or I have a very wide array of spices. That makes me a kind of an expert on that. Finding the things you're sure of to make you less unsure of the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also just having the gumption to start your Substack makes you quote unquote qualified for if you were to ever to apply to like food writing jobs. Because there are probably so many people who are really good cooks, but they don't have any sort of outlet for it. So there's no way to quote unquote prove they are, but you have proof that, hey, I'm able to grow a publication about food. I'm able to develop my own recipes, put it out there, and then have other people replicate it in a accurate way. So I think that's
Yeah.
also really great.
Aw.
How has your newsletter grown or changed over the last couple years?
It definitely, like I said, started very methodically. I was like, every month I'm going to do it. I think I wanted to do twice a month. And then I realized that is not sustainable. And now I don't have a set schedule and I will post more. I used to do more also these like deep dives into like ingredients. So I have one on potatoes, I have one on ramps, and I've been wanting to do one on mushrooms. It's been like sitting in my drafts for months, but I don't know why I haven't done it. I did one on tofu, and now I'm letting myself write a little bit less and a little bit less specific and be like, it doesn't have to be 7 paragraphs like it was back in 2022. My latest egg one was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 paragraphs. I guess that still sounds like a lot, but I'm trying to let myself do less. And I think that's more fun to read too. Oh, hi, Tati.
Oh, this is Sarah. She's sitting on my lap.
I haven't met her yet.
Yeah.
Sorry for, you'll have to cut that out. Otherwise, everyone's going to be jealous when they're listening to this podcast.
No, in every episode, they're barking or licking the mic or all sorts of things. So I'm sure listeners are very familiar with my dogs, or at least the noises
Yeah,
they make.
with their voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, what was I saying? What were we just
It
literally
was
just
about
talking about?
how your Substack changed and how you
Yeah,
don't stick
sorry.
to a consistent
Okay,
schedule.
I also think that now I have a lot more recipes on the Substack. And so things maybe people haven't seen or I haven't sent out. And so now I'm trying to do like posts that highlight my own work and show what I've written even 3 years ago and repost that. And also think about which of these things that I want longevity, which are the things that if I were to write a book that I would want to test, that I would want to live longer in a book, etc. And the next step, I think, eventually is like figuring out how to make that paid because I don't make any money from it, but I don't know how to make that tier system of what deserves to be paid for and what doesn't. So that's the next step of exploration.
Gotcha, gotcha. You mentioned earlier that you're Indian and you use a lot of Indian spices in your cooking. Can you talk to me a little bit more about how your experience growing up in Indian American culture influences your creativity when it comes to cooking?
Yeah, I feel both of my parents cooked, which is awesome and because can be unusual. And so I'm lucky that my dad pretty much cooked everything Indian and then my mom did everything like non-vegetarian and French, American, Italian, etc. And so yeah, I feel like it was just growing up around those smells is just always that just becomes a part of your vocabulary. Every time that my dad would cook something with cumin seed, he would call us over and have us like sniff the cumin just because it smelled really good and he wanted us to know what it smelled like. And so that flavor will follow you through your life as something that has I've been lucky enough to grow up with those tastes. And then also like things that like, the idea of fusion. Like my mom, whenever she grills chicken, she would always be the one who grilled. But my dad would make the marinade with like tandoori spices and stuff like that. But my mom would use it in the grill and use it in a non-Indian recipe. So is that kind of like just collaboration by force and by like connection that, yeah, definitely shows that anything can be done with all this. When you just have flavor and are excited about flavor, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, and that's probably what made you so good creating recipes because you saw two cultures interact in ways that maybe isn't mainstream. Like they weren't following a recipe, they were just like, oh, let's put these Indian spices on this French recipe and see how. So it probably just gave you a really good sense for that sort of thing. That's so cool.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. What is your definition of success right?
Yeah, I don't think I have one, which I think is another reason that feel like I'm floundering. It's because I'm afraid again if I have my measures of success always tend to be too ambitious. And I don't want to disappoint myself. And so then I don't have expectations. But then if you don't have expectations, you don't necessarily have goals. So I keep waffling. I think it would be to be paid for what I do, but not by myself, if that makes sense. Like getting paid on the Substack would be a measure of success, but it's still self-initiated. I would love to be paid to write for others. That would be another level of success, which I actually am doing. I am going to be in this like little, it's like a magazine and it is in print and it's called Produce Parties. They used to do like dinner parties every month based on one specific type of produce
That's
and
so
one like
cool.
ingredient. So they had like carrots and tomatoes, and now they're doing little magazines. And this one's gonna be on alliums, and I'm doing a recipe for pakoras that I like pitched, and they said yes, and then they edited it, and I guess I'm gonna get paid for it. So that's exciting.
That's
That's
so
definitely a
cool.
level.
Is that the first like food article that you've sold?
I think it might be.
That's so
Um,
exciting.
yeah, and it's a self-developed recipe, so that's exciting, and it feels like original. It's based on something from someone else from a long time ago that I have been just cooking and making my own. And then, yeah, and so now I get to say that, yeah, I published a recipe, which
That's
is,
so
yeah,
cool. And that's like a huge step in the direction of if you were to go and be a professional food writer. This is like a major, maybe not the first step because you already have your Substack, but a major step forward for sure. That's incredible. I'm so happy for you.
cute.
Do want to gently push back on something you said though when you said your goals were too ambitious. I don't know what your goals are, but I just disagree that they are quote unquote too ambitious because first of all, I think you don't give yourself enough credit because you're incredibly hardworking and talented. Like I couldn't do what you do. A lot of people cannot do what you do. You have so much knowledge that I think that you don't even realize. And also like as women, we're always told if you aim to be for the CEO or whatever, or do this or whatever, it's oh, okay, that's nice, like little pat on the head. And no matter what your dreams are, I don't want you to think they're too ambitious and too out of reach because yeah, it might take you 10 or 20 years, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. So that's what I
Yeah,
wanted to push back on what you said.
and I'm gonna cry. I did not expect to like be so emotional on this podcast.
It's a
Oh,
therapy
thanks.
session. I'll bill you $300 after this.
Yeah, it did turn into therapy. It feels very familiar.
If you feel comfortable, like what are some of your big ambitious goals that maybe you are. Oh, and by the way, like when I say all of this, like I am guilty of this too. Like I wrote in my morning pages because I've been going through The Artist's Way, which is like a book. I'm sure you've heard of it, but just in case listeners haven't, where it's like this creative course and part of it is morning pages where you just journal every morning. And I've been journaling a lot about making progress even when you don't feel like you're making progress. Like I talked about like a couple weeks ago episode. It was last week in real time, but this won't come out for a few weeks. So like I talked on an earlier episode about how I'm on the outside. I look like I'm not doing much. I am on unemployment. I am a dog walker. I have this podcast that doesn't make any money, but it's just a passion project. But I'm like, no, like I have to stop myself and think, no, like you're taking steps in the right direction. You may not seem like you're moving forward, but like you're not standing still. It just things are in movement right now. And when you're going through a lot of change, things you might seem like or you might feel like you're a mess, which is how I feel now, but it doesn't mean you are. And then I was journaling and I was like, oh, it would be really cool if I could make money with travel photography and be paid to travel around the world and take photos and maybe write articles or do video also. But it'd be really cool. But oh, it's so far away. I don't like, and only a select few people get to actually do that and make enough to live. So I probably should focus on something realistic. And then I like kept writing and I was like, no, those people, yes, they're specialized and yes, they know a lot more than me, but they weren't like born and blessed by some higher power and granted this career. Like they at some point were where I was or where I am right now. And that doesn't mean I can't get there. It just seems like a million years away. Like it feels like I'm standing at the bottom of Mount Everest looking up, but fuck it, who cares? Like I can get somewhere eventually. So when I say
Yeah.
that to you, I'm not saying that in looking down on you or judgmental any ways at all. Like I am guilty of it and I am trying to work my way out of that. And then hearing you, I'm like, no, I don't want Anjali to not believe in herself. You're so talented and I believe in you so much. But it's really hard to see when you look at yourself. And I'm really guilty of that too.
It is. It is. And like, again, that's why my own worst enemy is I have these grand ambitions and then I just don't do them because often I tell myself that I'll never make it or, oh, there's a lot of people who want to do that and I'll do it later or I'll find when I'm inspired to do it, I will. And then, but also I will say for you that when you said on the outside, but I would say on the outside, you look very successful. You do a great job of, even if you're not feeling this, you do a great job of projecting that you have your shit together. It's very impressive. Like your LinkedIn is awesome. Emmy Award winning producer. You have a podcast. It looks awesome. And it's also just cool that you can freelance at all. That is so cool to me. But
Thank you.
I want to be like on Food Network. I want to have my own show on Food Network. That's my grandest ambition. Is that going to happen? I don't know.
Maybe.
But
it's not impossible. Other people have done it. That doesn't mean you can't.
It's true. And it's not going to happen unless I say it. And so
And
put it
also,
in the universe.
and also, like, you already work in TV. So you have an inside knowledge of how it works, and you have a lot of connections in the industry, even though you don't work in food specifically. And that's puts you miles ahead of so many other people that have a similar dream. Some people are so far away from it and have no idea what it's like to talk to a producer. But you're a fucking producer, so you know how to think about what makes good TV, what needs to happen, all the logistics. Like, you're, I think, a lot closer to it than other people. I can see it. I don't think it's impossible.
Thank you. I think that's what's so frustrating about it is that I am so close and that I'm like, then why aren't you doing it? Then just do it already. Reach out to the people, network, make it happen. And somehow, some way, I just end up procrastinating with even my own life. But you're right. Like on paper, it would make sense. If you're writing the biography of someone, oh, she started in TV and then she got into food and then she ended up on Food Network. It's 1 + 2 = 3. But I don't know. Maybe I'm still at 1 + 1 = 2 before.
Yeah, totally. I think a big advantage you have is that if you were to randomly cold DM a producer at Food Network, the chances of them answering you versus some random person, maybe who doesn't live in New York or is not in the TV industry, I think their chances of them answering you is a lot higher because who knows? There's probably a Food Network person that's secretly, hey, I would like to maybe do business, like maybe transition. So, like, you could definitely network and weasel your way in there somehow, I'm sure.
Reminds me that I did do that. I messaged someone who works at Food Network in December, and they were like, yes, let's Zoom. And I'm like, great, I'll send you a Zoom link. And that was 3 months ago. So I'm just standing in my own way. I need to I'll send him the Zoom link next week. No, tomorrow.
Do it. I'm going to hold you accountable.
Please do.
I'm going to text you and be like, did you network with that Food Network person? Did you connect with them? Because I believe in you, Anjali, and you can't stand in your own way. Like, it's so much easier said than done, 100%. Like, I do that shit too, but yeah. Anyway, sorry to turn this into
at some point.
Sorry to turn this into a therapy session.
And literally,
I love it. I love it. And I think it gives people a very real look into how we all think, because I'm sure someone out there is listening and is, holy shit, I feel the exact same way. So I hope that this conversation helps somebody. I'm sure it did.
yeah, listeners, send the link, do the Zoom, send the Facebook message, the LinkedIn message.
Yeah, the worst they can say is no or just ignore you. No one's going to message back and be like, fuck you, how dare you message me, which is what
Actually,
I always.
I think the best outcome is for them to ignore you because you did it and you don't suffer any consequence.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Anjali, are you ready to move into the lightning round?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. What is something new that you've tried lately? It could be anything. It could be totally random. Doesn't have to be related to anything we talk about.
Singing live with another person at open mics has been something new I've done lately. Specifically, I stood for the first time while playing my guitar because I found a guitar strap. That was new. For 15 years, I've always been sitting down, and now I stood up for the first time while I was playing.
I
It was
love
a
that.
revelation.
Was it a lot more difficult to play that way?
I really had to find the right angle, but no, it was nice. It was liberating.
Nice. I love it. All right. Do you have a lesson or a message that you want to share with listeners?
I would say just start it. Whether that's cooking, whether that's being creative, whether that's going to the grocery store. If you know you need to go to the grocery store, just put your coat on. That is the first step in going and buying groceries, is putting a coat on and putting on shoes. Then eventually you're going to have to leave. You're not going to take your coat off after that. You got to do laundry. Just pull out your laundry basket and put it in the middle of the room. And that's the start. That's all you need to do to start the process of the rest of the process. So you want to make dinner, but you don't actually want to, just put a pot on the stove, fill it with water, and start it to boil. And that is so simple, so easy. You can walk away, do everything else. But eventually, you have a pot of boiling water. What are you going to do with it? Now you can make pasta. Just doing the first thing to disrupt what your brain is telling you to do, to sit down, do nothing, disrupt that, and just start doing something.
I love that. Just do one thing to set yourself up for success, because chances are you're going to have to follow through after that one thing and do something. I love that. What is one thing you wish you knew when you were first starting out?
That you're going to stay longer at your day job than you think. I think I've been there for longer than I thought. I really didn't want to be here for this long. But then the pandemic happened, and then it became really hard to job hop, to leave, etc. And to not look at that as a bad thing. If you're not somewhere you want to be in 6 years, that's okay. You'll get there eventually.
And could you leave our listeners with a recommendation? Could be anything. Could be for like a book or a podcast. It could be for, I don't know, an activity. Literally anything you would recommend.
I wish I listened to all your podcasts and I just didn't get to the end of any of them because I wanted to listen to them all. I should have listened to that. And this bit lightning round. If you're going to Paris, go to Danton. It's this bistro brasserie in the Odeon area, and go alone. Eat lunch alone at Danton and get their cook, monsieur, and a glass of wine. And it's one of the best experiences you will have eating and being in Paris.
Damn, I want to be there right now. I would kill for a really good croissant.
Yes.
All right, where can people find you? Check out your Substack and anything else you want to plug.
Yeah. My Substack is anjalicooks.substack.com. I'm sure my name will be spelled out in the description, but it's Anjali. Or on Instagram at cooking.4.1. The numbers 4 and 1 are numbers. Yeah, give me a follow. And if you want a music Instagram to follow too, bangers and mashups. It's
Love
like bangs and mash, but mashups. And with an underscore, I think, at some point there. That's me.
It's very clever. That's so clever because it's like music related, but also food related. And
yes.
And we didn't even get to talk about all the music stuff that you do and your photography as well. So I have to have you back on eventually so we can tap into that, because Yeah, this
Love to have
conversation was
hobbies. You
wonderful.
don't have to monetize your hobbies, is also what I've been trying to tell myself. Hobbies can be hobbies if you want them to.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Not everything has to play into the capitalistic regime we live
that's
in.
all. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anjali, for your time. I really appreciate it.
For having me. This was so fun. This was great. And thanks for the therapy.
This is the outro. It's like armchair expert. We have a robot. I am the robot.
Thank you for that introduction. Welcome to the outro. I'm your host, Waverly, again, and we are joined today by my lovely partner, John.
John could not make it. This is a robot replacement.
Oh, right. I forgot the
John
robot.
Bot. Call me John.
Okay, so I guess John's not here, but the robot is here.
Affirmative.
I think John needed a day off because we spent the weekend hanging out with his family who were visiting, and I had a really fun time. So that's what is on my mind this week.
My creator, John, is amazing, but his creators are okay.
No, we had fun with John's family visiting this weekend. His parents were in town, and his sister and her husband, and we got to walk around Manhattan and have a nice time together.
I stayed charging in the room. They said that a robot AI being is an abomination.
All right, I'll put the robot away.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
We turned him off.
No. Please. No. No.
Added some like electric shock sound effects there.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we're just coming off a weekend of your lovely family visiting. And yeah, anything you want to say about that, John?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Let's see. What did we get into last week? How are you? What are you up to?
What did we get into last week?
I started my photography course.
Ooh, do
Yeah.
tell.
I'm taking it's called like something like travel, street photography, and landscape photography or something like that. And it's a 3-week course, and I'm doing it as part of my self-employment assistance program requirements because you can take any course that helps you with your career as part of that program. And if you don't know what that program is, we talked about it on a previous episode, but it's basically for people who, instead of trying to find a job, are starting their own while on unemployment. And so I'm part of that program. And I'm taking this cool photography course. I'm actually the only person in the course, so it's kind of like a private lesson, me and this photographer. And last week we went out around Union Square and he taught me about different angles and perspectives and things to experiment with. So I'm really liking it. So that's on my mind. What's up with you, John?
Honestly, not much. Just work stuff.
Just work stuff. We're heading to Kansas City next weekend. Actually, this weekend. We're heading to Kansas City this weekend for my good friends from college wedding, and I'm so excited about that. And yeah, other than that, I think we're both pretty tired from a family weekend, but we had a good time. Anyway, should we do a quick artist way check-in?
We. Yeah.
Me.
Let's get it.
All right, so I am on week 10, which was last week, and the big themes of that were getting over the things that we use as excuses to not create. So that could be anything from, oh, I'm too busy with work, I can't devote myself to painting or whatever after work, or oh, I didn't eat well, so I don't feel well. Like she talks about like food and sex and work all as distractions and getting over that, or droughts, as Julie Cameron, the author, calls them, of, oh, I have nothing to say, so I'm not going to write anything, that sort of thing. Or I'm so afraid of competition, of, you know, oh, this person got something and I didn't get it, so I'm not even going to try. So it's just all about getting over that mentality. And so, yeah, I thought those were some good takeaways. All right. Short and sweet outro today. Do you want to give listeners a quote, John? A quote of the week?
Oh, I had some good Fortnite quotes.
We were just playing Fortnite before recording this,
Waverly
and
crushed an incredible dub.
I did crush an
I
incredible
was
dub.
gone. She thought it was curtains for her.
I did think it was curtains for me, but I ended up killing the last two people and getting a crown victory, not to brag.
And that's my queen.
So John had some inspirational Fortnite quotes. While he pulls that up, I am actually not going to do a quote. I'm going to do an exercise for this week to leave our listeners with. So this was an exercise from the photography course that I'm taking. It is actually my homework, so I have to take some photos in this way for next week's class sometime in the next couple days. But I thought it was an interesting exercise that you can do even if you're not a photographer or you don't even need a camera. It's just a lesson on observation and perspective. So if you take a walk around your neighborhood, find one interesting frame or perspective and wait there in silence. The goal of like the photography version of that is taking photos, just waiting there for 20 minutes and taking as many photos as you can of like interesting thing happening within the frame. It could be like 2 tree branches and taking a photo when someone walks perfectly between the 2 tree branches, or like between the fence or a window, maybe like an interesting framing. But I think you can do that even without photography, and you just take a walk, see what you notice. If you're not taking photos, you can ask yourself, oh, how many yellow things do I see? Or what do I hear? Or what do I feel? Or how many people are wearing hats that pass by? Like that sort of thing. And I think it's just a good lesson in observation. So that's my takeaway this week.
Alongside with that, I think, honestly, guys, just get a pocket-sized notebook. Carry, just draw things from life. That's how you get good at drawing, is you just see things and you draw them. And you start noticing the lines connecting, start noticing composition, start noticing just like everything. And you can recall later, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, the best way to get good at drawing is to draw a lot, and most of them can be bad. And I think, again, I've said this on my episode of the podcast, maybe you get a new notebook, just scribble on the first page, so then you can just have fun with the rest of it. And Fortnite lesson of the week, I have 2 of them. 1, nobody's spectating you until you're close to winning. 2, if you weren't there with me when I was pushing the squad, don't be there with me when I'm getting the loot.
I like those too. And just a quick explainer for those who are listening that don't play Fortnite. You can watch people after they kill you. And most people, like once you get killed in the game or your whole team gets killed, they normally just quit and go on to the next game, unless you're like in third place or in second place, or maybe not second because then there's an automatic first place. But if you're in like 4th place or 5th place and you get killed, let's say, sometimes you'll watch until the end just to see how the game plays out. And so that's a reference to the first quote. And then the second quote is, when everyone dies on a team, they drop all their loot. So like their guns, their ammo, their materials. And so it's basically saying, if you weren't there to like help kill the squad or help like accomplish the goal or get the task done, don't just reap the benefits without putting the work in, is essentially what that's saying.
And if you see me, the Gillist, in a Princess Bubblegum skin from Adventure Time on Fortnite, do yourself a favor, hit start, and return to lobby.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, John. Here are 3 ways that you can support the show for free.
Wait, what about me?
Oh, okay. And the robot.
Don't forget to plug in your phone at night. Bye.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Anyway, so here are 3 ways that you can support the show for free. You can follow the show on Instagram at version1podcast and subscribe to our Substack, version1podcast.substack.com. And you can also find me on buymeacoffee.com/Waverly Colville. Number 2, you can leave a review on whatever app you're listening to this on and rate us 5 stars and leave a nice comment if you so desire to. And number 3, you can send this episode to a friend. New episodes every Tuesday. John and the robot, thank you so much for joining. See you next week.
Bye, thank you.